Hey folks, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to our weekly Sword Art Online discussion, and today we're here to talk about episode 11 of Alicization War of Underworld, The Heartless Choice. But before we begin, I do want to give a big thank you to those of you who shared last week's video over on Twitter, at Nacho Gashardo, at Foxton2X, and at Bubblelubber. Thanks so much for sharing last week's video, you guys, and if you too would like to have your name shouted out in next week's Sword Art Online Alicization War of Underworld Part 1 finale, that's a lot, then be sure to share this video around on the internet, and then tag me at JoJo Talks Too Much over on Twitter, and I will be sure to shout your name out in next week's finale. Okay, so the penultimate episode of the first part of War of Underworld, and I hate to say it, but I'm a little conflicted on this week's episode. There's a lot that I liked, there's also a lot that if I'm honest, that I just didn't quite like, and I feel bad saying that because I've been really enjoying. You guys, if you've been keeping up with the channel, you know that War, like Alicization, in particular War of Underworld, but also like the first part of Alicization, has been some of my favorite parts of SAO. Now, I'm a big SAO guy. I recognize that SAO has issues. Don't get me wrong, I totally accept them. But at the same time, it's still a series that I hold quite close to my heart. A little bit of personal attachment there, a bit of personal bias, I can admit that. But overall, I think that I've grown so attached to this series, flaws and all, and I really feel as though Reki has really elevated the game when it came to Alicization. His game, like he's really upped his own game when it comes to Alicization, and I'm really proud of a lot of the work he does. But there's some writing decisions that in fairness, I can't tell if it's a Reki thing or if it's an A1 thing. Because the thing with a lot of Reki's writing, according to those of you who watch the videos and have been pointing them out, and keep doing that by the way, I appreciate it, but it's when things get lost in translation between light novel to anime, because Reki's actually been putting in a lot of character development for characters like Alice, for characters like Asuna, and they've been sort of lost in translation to really push this whole quote-unquote harem agenda, because according to a lot of light novel readers, while there's like the pseudo-harem-ish stuff going on, for the most part, Kirito's with Asuna, Asuna's with Kirito, and Alice and the gang, like the harem group, it's not really a thing. But for some reason, A1 loves to push that, and anything that could give characters development outside of how much they just super love Kirito and give them some depth, like characters like Alice, who really was leaning on, according to like light novel fans, Alice really was leaning on Kirito as a crutch, which is what I had assumed, given that certain scenes sort of hinted that. In the text, Reki makes that very clear, but apparently in the anime, not quite the case. As we saw with the last couple episodes, Alice, especially last week, Alice is just has a defensive crush over Kirito, which is dumb. And that's kind of unfortunate. It's a blemish on the anime, but it does make me want to go out and read the light novels, if I'm totally honest. And because I do want to support Reki, especially given how much he's improved over time. Every subsequent arc of SAO seems to get that little bit better. It's just the anime sometimes has this tendency to be like, well, people like the harem stuff, so we gotta keep putting in the harem thing, even though at this point, in the year of our Lord 2019, a lot of harem tropes just sort of make otakus tired rather than excited. But JoJo, why are you bringing up the harem thing? Well, because the quote-unquote harem makes their return, and this is where I'm very torn, because I'm not gonna call them the harem, because they're not a harem anymore, I'm just gonna call them the group. And the group makes their big return. It's everybody you expect. It's Leafa, Sinon, Klein, my boy. Even Aggle's there. Like, everybody shows up. My girl Lisbeth, who is the best of the group, at least as far as I'm concerned. The best of the girls of the group, because the best of the group is Klein. But the best of the girls is Lisbeth, as far as I'm concerned. Not counting Asuna, by the way. But yeah, Sinon. See, this is what I mean. Like, I like these characters. They're fun. Are they basic? Sure, but they haven't really had a chance to shine in quite the same way that characters like Sinon have, or characters that Asuna have. Klein, I feel like, has a lot of potential. They totally squandered it when they actually gave him something to do last season. But he does have a lot of potential. Characters like Lisbeth have a lot of potential. Aggle, I feel like the boat has passed Aggle by, but maybe they can give him something to do in a future arc. I'm happy to see the group come back, but at the same time, I'm torn because their inclusion feels weird. It doesn't feel necessary to the story. They do have that scene where they're like, we've synced the Underworld to be compatible with the real world, so now users can sign into Underworld, I'm assuming using the seed, but that's where it gets confusing, right? And I've said this in previous videos, that the tech side of SAO is horribly boring to me. This is very much a me thing. Keep in mind, not a critic. I'm just giving you guys my opinion. Even the ratings at the end of the video are not meant to be a critical analysis of an episode, it's just my opinion of an episode. And my opinion on the tech stuff in this episode was, oh my goodness, I did not care. I was totally in when Yui had that first phone call to Sinon, like, you need to get in a cab and go blah blah blah. Like, I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Where are we going with this? And it was really interesting. And they have that line of like, there's 2 high school girls here saying that you need to check the systems or whatever. I don't know what's going on. They said that their names are Lifa and Sinon. That can't be right? And meanwhile, we're like, oh snap, something's gonna happen. And that scene is cool, and it's followed up by the Yui scene where she's talking about what's going on in Underworld to Klein and everybody. And that scene was also cool, up until a certain point. This is an issue that I have with the overall, the grander plot of Alicization, and it's something that I've had an issue with from the jump, and that's that the whole Alice thing. I like it. See, this is what I mean, right? This is why I'm really considering this one of the more mixed bag episodes, because I like it on paper, but once you have to start explaining what the plot is where it starts to kind of fall apart for me. Like, they specifically say that it's the US government coming after Alice. Why Alice? Why Alice specifically? Like, because she has a fluctlight, I guess? Like, she has a soul, quote unquote, but what makes that different than a drone? Wouldn't a drone be more effective? Am I insane? What makes Alice different from a character like Yui? Because she has a fluctlight? She has a soul? Like, I don't understand. What makes, like, Yui is an AI, or some kind, she's some sort of artificial intelligence. Yui is a character who we've known way back in the Ironclad arc, the very beginning of SAO. Yui wasn't there from, like, episode 1, but she was basically there for a long-ass time. She's been with the show forever. What's the difference? Even in ordinal scale, like what is the difference between these AI characters and Alice? I never really understood that, and it's only once it's brought up again that I'm like, yeah, wait, Alice is different because she has a soul. Is that it? Because I don't mean to be a dick, believe me, I'm not trying to be a jerk about it, I'm just confused. Is that all that's different about Alice? Because that doesn't really seem like a lot to me, and I'm not super clear on why the government would care. And also, the fact that they point out that, like, we can't tell the Americans that the US government is attacking these real people, quote unquote real people, these AI with souls. We can't tell them that because that could start an international incident. But then we're gonna go ahead and tell all these Japanese players in ALO the exact same information that we just said we couldn't tell the Americans, and I'm unclear as to why that's okay, but not telling other characters is not, like, because the ALO players will keep it a secret, I guess? I feel like that's kind of a stretch. I haven't used this clip in a while, but I'm gonna have to pull out an old favorite.
It just raises too many questions.
You're right, Batman. It does in fact raise far too many questions, and I'm just painfully confused. But then again, I am kind of dumb. We all know that I am not exactly the sharpest tool in the shed. So maybe it just all went over my head. I don't know. I wasn't a big fan of the info dump this week, especially in the penultimate episode. You should be building the hype, A1, not letting it fall to sunders. Reki deserved better, damn it. And you know who else deserved better? Lizbeth. Because it's rare to see Liz get to do anything, so seeing her get a moment was dope. Even though, again, there's that line of, like, we can't tell everybody, and then they proceed to tell everybody, which is like, okay, well, why'd you even say it? But I liked that scene a lot. I thought they really put a lot of emotion behind her words. I loved the idea that the other VR MMO players feel as though the SAO survivors look down on other VR MMO players. Like, they look down on the ones who weren't involved in the SAO incident. And at first I was like, well, why would they do that? But the more I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, I kind of understand why VR MMO players would have that sort of weird bias, that they sort of stand apart from the SAO survivors, since they didn't go through that traumatic experience and come out the other side. And it's those players who seem to give the VR community a bad rap because of what happened to them. And unfortunately, there are people who do think that way. So them having that sort of bias against SAO survivors, I understand why that would work, and I thought that was a really nice touch. And especially hearing Liz explain that being an SAO survivor isn't a good thing. Like, we don't feel any different to any of you. In fact, if anything, we envy you. Like, we have to go to this SAO school this school for other SAO survivors. We have to get, we're put on a watch list for future criminal activity. We have to have this invasive heart-to-heart with therapists like once a month and all this crap. And like, a lot of them don't even want to have the one-on-one. A lot of them just want to move on with their lives. But being an SAO survivor means it's going to constantly get brought up. And I thought that was a really interesting idea, the idea that if you were a student at the time of the SAO incident, following that you'd have to go to the school for SAO survivors, which we have seen in the show as well. And I really thought that was interesting. We don't get enough of their school life, which, don't get me wrong, I'm happy about. Enough anime gives too much attention to high school, and I'm kind of glad we don't see too much of it. But I do think that you could build a more proper arc on the real life stuff, especially given how much that these characters can shine. Like, look at Liz. I didn't even like some of the things that were being discussed in that scene, but I still was involved because Liz is awesome. Like Liz in that moment is great. She's not the most amazing character ever, but like, character design wise, I think Liz is the most pretty looking character. I think her SAO is great, and I think when she does have a scene, Liz is cool. We just don't get enough from them. And I feel as though you could do an entire arc based on just the other characters. Not Asuna, not Kirito. Do an arc about Klein. Klein already had his own arc. Do an arc about Liz and have Klein be that. Like, do an arc where we focus on the other characters, give them some shine, something like that. I also did appreciate that at the end of the speech, we don't necessarily know what the opinion of the ALO players ultimately is, since a lot of them were still sort of like, they were upset by the idea of having to not only give up their characters, but go to this world where they will feel actual pain. And by actual pain, I mean if they die in the game, it will feel like dying. To quote Neo, it felt like dying. And that ain't fun, man. So I understand where the ALO players are coming from. Also, the idea of losing a character that you've built, like, put hours upon hours into, that sucks. For what, AI that could potentially have a soul? You don't know if they're telling the truth or not. Like, that's a tough situation, and it's a tough sell. But we've shown that a lot of the ALO players are good people, especially the Sleeping Knights, who we do get to see. I loved that. I love whenever they have a callback to a previous arc from SAO, because even if it's from a character that I'm not fond of, like, a part of me was kind of hoping to see Recon show up at some point. Like, it was like, I don't know, because I feel like whatever happened to him? He was with Leafa for a while, like he was Leafa's buddy during the ALO arc, even though I'm not a big fan of that arc. The Fairy Dance arc is not my favorite. It's probably my least favorite arc in anything. But I was kind of hoping to see Recon show up, just because we saw the Sleeping Knights. Maybe I missed him and he was there. I don't know. But we also do see a mysterious figure show up, which I find to be very interesting. I don't know who this is. Maybe it's somebody we know and I'm just stupid. And I don't remember them, because that has been a thing. Like, Dea Solbert was a character who I totally forgot about. So maybe this was meant to be a character who we know. I don't think so. Is this a character from a future arc of SAO? Is this a character who's going to have a part to play in the second half of War of Underworld? No idea. Here's what I do know, though. This episode was very much a mixed bag. So to recap, the things that I didn't really like was I didn't like a lot of the plot explanation, because it felt like it just raised more questions than anything. I'm not a big fan of the overarching plot of the series. I care more about what happens to these characters. I didn't really like the inclusion of the gang either. I feel like it should have just been Asuna. I'm not sure how I feel about the rest of the gang joining in. It's nice to see them, but I feel like they should be part of an arc where they're actually involved from the start. Having them just tossed in feels sort of like a slap in the face to those characters. I feel like they deserve their own arc entirely separate from Alicization. Throwing them in at the end here feels sort of odd. But there is stuff that I appreciated about this episode as well. I really liked seeing the Sleeping Knights again, seeing the characters from ALO again. I thought Ishkan, the champion of the pugilists, I thought he had a great scene. I didn't really get to mention it earlier, but I did think that his scene with them crossing the chasm was great. I don't know. You could tell that I'm all over the place because I felt really mixed about this episode. And I'm a little concerned going into the finale now. I hope A1 could pull it off. A1 is very hit and miss sometimes, but I'm positive going into the finale. Maybe this was just a bit of a hiccup leading into the finale of the first half of War of Underworld. So that's basically all my thoughts on this week's episode. If you couldn't tell, it's going to get a C. I thought it was just sort of okay. I'm a little disappointed, but I'm hopeful going into next week's finale, the mid-season finale, I guess you could say. And I don't know, I think that they can pull off a decent finale. This penultimate episode was just a bit of a letdown for me. And that's going to do it for today's video, everybody. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Before we go, as always, I have to give a big shout out to the good folks over on Patreon, namely those in the Earl Grey tier. Calvin Atkinson, Crowbar of Irony, Ionos, Urza, Ginkotaku, Godzilla Fan, No For Nothing, Maria Teresa, Mirth Mouser, Cell, Shadow Creative, Sipco Games, Somastan, Steven, Sukochi, Tristan, and Verdon. Thank you all so much for your continued support over on Patreon. It is so appreciated. And if you too would like to join the T Squadron, then be sure to check out the first link in the description to check out our Patreon page, see all the cool rewards you can get over there, as well as access to our Patreon exclusive Discord. But with all that said, everybody, I am going to take off. I hope you guys enjoyed. And if you are feeling stressed out today, then you go have yourself a warm cup of tea. And I will talk to you all again real soon.